Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to the idea that is in-depth editorial analysis discussion. Well, my name is Sahil and in this particular session we are going to discuss quite an important ideas that are coming in the newspapers and just just a minute guys. Okay, so let's start with the video. So basically I will be giving you the idea of this particular program and then we will be proceeding and we will be covering the articles. First of all, this particular program will be focusing on number one on the content enrichment for all the papers, that is the GS paper number 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now guys, understand this particular thing. For the UPSC examination, we need two things. Number one, we need the facts and number two, we need the opinions. Now guys, when we talk about the opinions do play a very important role in developing the overarching understanding for the UPSC examination, and in your mains examination, personality test, that is the interview, they are very important. And there are some very good ideas, opinions that are coming into the different newspapers, which usually we miss as the UPSC aspirant because we always have a limited bandwidth. Primarily we are focused on the Hindu newspaper, but there are some really good editorial pieces that come in the other newspapers. We are going to discuss them. Now, we are not only going to discuss the important editorials, but also in this particular session, we'll be discussing the art of linking the contemporary affairs with the static of GS paper number 1, 2, 3, as well as the 4 also. Moreover, in these particular articles, these particular editorial discussions, we are also going to take the detailed background in the issues. We are going to take the structured explanations and the exam presentation. Now basically there is a one particular art in which your answers should be written. So from time to time that particular art will also be decoded, and the most important focus will be on multidimensionality. For example, if a climate change topic is coming, so how the climate change topic can be seen with geographical perspective, environmental perspective, strategic perspective, economic perspective, how it can also be seen in the perspective of ethics, GS paper number 4, that multidimensionality also we are going to discuss. So basically all this will be the key focus of this particular program, and from today we are starting this idea that is the in-depth editorial analysis discussion. Now first of all guys, I will be showing you the brief topics that we are going to discuss in the today's newspaper. So in the today's newspaper, broadly I had covered the four newspapers. Number one, we have covered the Hindu business line. Number two, we have covered the Times of India. Number three, we have covered the Indian Express, and number four, we have covered the Hindustan Times. And in fact, there is one more article from the Times of India. There were not good articles today into the Hindu newspaper, particularly for the exam. So that particular thing has not been taken up. So these are the four newspapers that we have taken up in the today's newspaper. Now, today we are going to discuss the 5 editorials in total, and I will be first of all giving you the brief overview of the editorials that we are going to discuss and the utility for the exam. Also, I will tell you. Fine. First of all, first article will be the business values moving the needle. Now, this particular article will be important for GS paper number 4 values, and in the essay also, this is going to be a very important article. Then the second article will be the Indian innovation that can change the world. So financial inclusion, digitization of Indian economy, a very good article. And therefore for GS paper number 3, digitization of Indian economy, we'll see this article. Then the third article is finding the transition, and it is talking about the climate change transition, the financial transitions that are needed right now. And this will be important for GS paper number 3, environment and climate change. Then the Tawang clash and India-China relations. So recently we have seen that confrontation between the India and the China happened in the Tawang sector in Arunachal Pradesh. So with respect to that, we are going to see this particular article will be important for GS paper number 2, India and China relations. Okay, and then how do we treat our first citizens? So this article is going to be again important for GS paper number 1 and GS paper number 2, tribal issues. Okay, so let's start with the discussion. And meanwhile guys, you are always free to ask if you have any doubt, if there is any confusion, you can ask them. And meanwhile, a very good evening to all the viewers who have joined. A very good morning to Anil, Pooja, Kumar, Harsh, Priyanka, Salman, Pallavi, Lakshmi, Pandi Santosh, Muzami, Shakti Priya, Siddhant, MD Films, Struggler, Sayamoshi, Sandeep, Nandan, Pooja. A very good morning to, a very good evening to all of you. Now, guys, let's start with the session. Okay. Now, starting up, so the first article, we have taken it from the Hindu business line. Okay, and in this particular article, guys, okay, one more thing is there, that will the PDF be available? So PDF is available on the Telegram channel, and you will also be finding the link for the PDF in the description box. So after the session ends, you will be given that particular link. You can download the PDF from there in the description box. So don't worry, you will get the PDF. Now, this particular article is taken from the business line. And briefly, what this article is talking about, guys, number one, it is talking that how the values are conflicting at the multiple levels. Values are conflicting at the national level. Secondly, then the values are conflicting at the civilizational level. Then thirdly, guys, the values are conflicting at the societal level. And as, just a minute, and as these particular values are conflicting, how India can play an important role in plugging this particular clash of values that's happening. So therefore, for the GS paper number 4, that is the ethics, where specifically the values are discussed, we can see this particular article. I'll tell you how. Moreover, in the essay, the article is going to be very, very important. Now let's start with the discussion. So basically, guys, the article has given the context of the FIFA World Cup that is right now going into the Qatar. So the 2022 FIFA World Cup is going into the Qatar, and this particular World Cup is actually a historic kind of a World Cup, because this is the first FIFA World Cup that is happening in any Arab nation. Okay, so therefore, we find this particular thing, that into the Qatar's stadium, there is a conflict of values that is going on. First of all, when we see a large number of Europeans who have came to Qatar to see the football match, they always want they want the beer while they cheer, they want alcohol while they're watching these matches. But at the same time, when we talk about the Qatar bans alcohol. Okay, at the same time, the Western players, they support the LGBTQ rights, okay, LGBT rights, but at the same time, at the same time, they are wearing the love bands to shame the Arab people who have the conservative sexual values. There is a sense of homophobia that has always prevailed into the Arab world, and that particular thing is being mocked by it outrightly by the Europeans. So simply what we can see, that in the Qatar, there is the clash of civilizational values that is going on. On one hand, we find the Europeans who are coming, who have the open values, who have the liberal values, and on to the other hand, the Arab, where this particular match is happening, the Qatar, they have the conservative values. Now these conservative values and liberal values are conflicting, and at the same time, guys, we find that onto the another hand, there is also the conservative and the neoliberal value, which is also infecting the trade relation between the developed and the developing countries. Even in the countries also, how the values are at conflict, we see this particular thing. Example number 1. So right now, under the ILO, that is the International Labour Organization, there is a dispute going on between the developed country and the developing country. Developed country, they want to bring certain labor reforms. Now the developed country want that, number one, LGBTQ rights should be enforced in all of the trading partners. Now the developed countries trading partner, that is the developing countries, sometimes the underdeveloped countries, they have conservative values and they are not very much okay with the homosexuality, but the developed countries impose that particular thing on the developing countries. Secondly, they are also talking about that the basic human rights of the workers should be enforced, minimum wages should be given to the workers, the right to form unions should be given to the workers, bargaining power of the workers should be strengthened. Now this is something good, it is about the human rights. But guys, when we talk about the developing countries, in the developing countries, in the developing countries, the focus will always be on the ease of doing business. And in that ease of doing business, always the developing countries have limitation in giving more and more trade union rights. And because of this particular thing, developing countries find it difficult to impose that. And they are always frustrated with the developed countries' high standards that they are imposing. Now, guys, understand this particular thing, that where the socialism came, okay, where the socialism came and why the socialism came. Socialism for the first time emerged into the industrial, into the countries which were the countries which are today developed. For example, you take the example of England. So when the England was developing, they themselves never gave rights to the labor unions. Because of that, socialism was born there, and today they are lecturing the developing countries. So this is something that the double standards are being shown. Then, moreover, these developed countries, they are always inspired by the neoliberal economic ideology. Now, the neoliberal economic ideology is one which will openly be preaching the open competition. It will say that the minimum market restrictions should be there, government interference should not be there. So, neoliberal economic ideologies are more inclined towards the free capitalism, and they want that the labor markets should be freed from all the socialist ideology. There should be no government interference. There should be the laissez-faire kind of a system that should prevail. Now, this is something which again irritates the developing countries. Fine. Then, guys, after that particular thing, the conservatives, they want to preserve their own cultures. They want to safeguard their own cultures. In that particular thing, LGBT rights, many of the gender issues, they don't take that thing positively. They see it as an interference in their culture. Then after that particular thing, we see that within the conservative elements, they say okay, that okay, you are lecturing us for the reform, but within the Western countries, these Western countries see immigrants from other culture as the pollutants. So when the Asian people are going into the Western countries, they see them as a pollutants. When they're bringing their festivals culture, that particular thing is not liked. So themselves, they are not tolerant, but they are lecturing the developing world. This is called as the hypocrisy of the developed world. Then further moving on, after that, it has also been seen this particular thing, that Western countries, in the name of opening up, in the name of globalization, has always forced their economic systems onto the developing countries. For example, Western nations have imposed themselves on the economies of the developing countries. They have asked by force that they should open up their economies so that the developed countries can take the benefit. They have imposed the Western fashion ideas, Western fashion, Western culture, Western ideas, and throughout the history of colonialism, this particular thing has happened. Now, then we see this particular thing, that the conflict of values is also happening within the developed world. It's not between the developing and the developed, but within the developed also. For example, we see this particular thing, that neoliberal values are clashing with the conservative values within the Western nations. For example, when we talk about the USA particularly, in the USA, basically in the US politics, there are the conservative Republicans, that is one of a faction, and the other faction are the Democrats, who are liberal. Now their viewpoints on the family values are very, very different. For example, conservative Republicans, they talk about the clear gender binaries, gender hierarchies, and the conservative Republicans, they say that the role of women is different, the role of men is different. Role of women is to nurture as mothers, to provide care, and at the same time the role of the father is to provide protection, is to give, is to have authority, is to bring discipline in the family. So the males have different role, the females have different role. They have divided a kind of a gender binary in this particular thing. However, on the other hand, liberals, they have different kind of mindset. Liberal are saying no, that's not correct. In the family, everybody is equal. Everybody have the liberties to be themselves. They can be unique. Whatever they feel like, they can take part in that particular kind of an activity. Okay, so this is the difference between the Westerners also that are there. Now, further moving on in this particular direction, guys. Now, at the same time, when we talk about the business, okay, we find this particular thing, guys, that the business also is facing the value clash. The corporate world is also facing the value clash. For example, the primary objective of business or the corporate is to make profit, is to create wealth for the investors. And in that particular capacity, environmental responsibilities, social responsibilities, or responsibility towards the health of the people is a secondary thing. It is not given a lot importance. Even according to the basic principle of the corporate law, the purpose of a limited liability business corporation is to enable investors to make profit. So whenever there are the regulations, just a minute. So whenever the regulations are being imposed for protecting the environment, for protecting the safeguard workers' right, these are seen as an impediment. These are seen as a kind of an obstruction in the ease of doing business. So business values are of profit, are of efficiency, they are of effectiveness, all these particular kind of things. But at the same time, environmental values, social values, values of human rights, they are not being taken up. So these two types of values are also at a kind of a conflict. We can see this particular thing. Then after that particular thing, there is also the clash between the capitalism versus humanism. Capital rights are trumping human rights everywhere. Guys, you might have seen also the case of China, where we have find this particular thing that often the workers, large number of workers have resorted to the suicides because of the high stress that has been imposed on them. So basically the capitalism, profitability, it has trumped onto the human rights everywhere. Powerful countries, wealthy corporations, they are setting the rules of global trade, global finance, everything. Okay, so today to the capitalism is the most important entity. Now, understand this thing that we all countries need to understand that the humanity is more important, and humanity must play as one team. So basically, now the time has come that West must pass the ball to the others to score the next goal. Now we have seen that the past 3 centuries have been the centuries of West. 21st century is a century of Asia, but the West is still in their hangover, and they don't want to pass the buck to the other countries. So they need to understand this particular thing. G7 today, even today, the G7 is afflicted with the hangover of authority, but we need to understand that the G7 represent just less than 10% of the world population. So what is more important than G7? It's the G20. It's the G20, which has 85% of GDP, 75% of world trade, and 66% of the world population. G20 is more important, and within the G20, the developing countries need to be given the baton to make the rules. Now, when we talk about India, India is the next chair of the G20. In the December, India has assumed the G20 presidency, and for the 2023 next year, India is going to be the president. And from India, there are a lot of great expectations that India will bring the government, civil societies, business organizations together, and they will try to make a world that is equitable to all. They will try to bring the global solution for the biggest challenges that we are having. For example, climate change challenge, increasing inequalities. According to the Oxfam report of 2022, it has been said that the COVID-19 pandemic, SARS-CoV-2 virus, has been an inequality virus. Inequalities have been enhanced by the leaps and bounds. Inequalities, health pandemic, poverty, okay, terrorism. These are the biggest challenge that the world is facing. So therefore, to fight these challenges, we need to pose a united front. And if the world countries are divided, that particular united front cannot be given. So therefore, we need to understand this particular kind of a thing. And India can be one which can bring the synthesis and unity. Big businesses, okay, basically the big businesses influence policy. They can lobby the government, they can present ideas, okay. The think tanks are producing the ideas which have a lot of currency in that. Now the time has also come that the world should understand the Gandhian principle of Antyodaya. Antyodaya means, now Gandhian principle of Antyodaya and Sarvodaya are very important. So there is Antyodaya and also there is Sarvodaya. Now, Sarvodaya means upliftment of all. Antyodaya means the upliftment of the last person, the person who is standing at last into the proverbial queue. Most vulnerable, most downtrodden, most deprived person's welfare and upliftment should be there. So, Antyodaya should be the guiding spirit, Okay, so this is something that we need to carry out. Now, guys, also we need a new breed of upstarts in the business. Fine. The business cannot only look for profit, cannot only look for efficiency. Business need to have compassion for the people who are at the bottom of the power pyramid. The worker rights are to be ensured. Workers are to be given all the dignities that they deserve. Is it clear? So people, planet, they cannot wait now. Now the time has come that we have to take the action, and from the bottom to the top approach is now needed. And in that particular thing, India, being the chair of the G20, can bring the meaningful reforms at the world stage. So this is, guys, all what has been contained in this particular article. And in fact, I find this article particularly very enlightening, particularly very different kind of an article. So that is all for this article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Okay, so the article number 2, so it has been taken from the Times of India newspaper, and this article is talking about the Indian innovations that can change the world. Indian innovations that can change the world. Now, basically, guys, this particular article is talking about the innovations in the digital space, technological innovations that India had taken up. And these technological innovations have actually been appreciated even by the developed countries. Recently, the Bill Gates particularly has appreciated the UPI architecture of India. I tell you guys, nowhere in the world transferring money in a digital way is as easy, is as effortless as it is in India. Now, when we talk about, guys, the first 2 decades of the 21st century, we know the Google, Amazon, Meta, Apple, Microsoft, they have been the harbingers of technological revolution that has come. They have been at the forefront of innovation explosion. They have been at the forefront of technological explosion that has come. Today, guys, when we talk about these firms, along with the Chinese firms such as the Alibaba, Tencent, today, they dominate the global sphere in advertising, digital advertising, commerce, messaging, cloud infrastructure, social media, mobile operating system. In all of them, they operate. And we see that basically they have become a formidable force. All the technological innovations that we have seen either in 21st century or in the 20th century or in the past, they have normally emerged from the developed world. But now the situations are changing. Now India is leading the world. India, in the digital revolution, technological revolution, has adopted a unique path. What is this unique path? India has adopted the India has adopted the powerful new approach through the digital public infrastructure. Digital public infrastructure. Now understand, this is a very interesting idea. What is the digital public infrastructure? Basically, the government and government entities are innovating in the digital sphere. They are making up the platforms and are making these particular platforms available as the open source software to the private sector. We call these open digital platforms as APIs. API stand for application programming interfaces. Okay, and these APIs are open, they are interoperable, and they also leverage the public data, okay, for open innovation models. I'll explain you this by the help of a very simple example. Now, basically, guys, you take the example of UPI. Okay. Now, when we talk about, guys, the UPI, through the UPI, Unified Payment Interface, the money can be transferred to any bank account just if you know their mobile number or if you know their virtual private address. Fine. So if you know their virtual private address or if you know their mobile number, money can be transferred. Now, UPI as a platform was developed by NPCI, that is the National Payment Corporation of India. And this UPI technology is made available as an open source to the private companies, and they have made their application on the basis of the UPI platform. For example, today we have Phone Pay, we have Google Pay. Okay, Phone Pay, Google Pay, all of them are based onto the UPI architecture. Today, when we talk about India, India has one of the most robust fintech ecosystem in the world, and that fintech ecosystem is based onto these APIs that have been developed by the government entities. Now, we have certain examples of these DPIs, that is the digital public infrastructure. Some of the examples, for example, JAM. Now, what is JAM? JAM stands for the Jandhan Aadhaar and Mobile. So basically, there is a Aadhaar number which have given the unique identity. The mobile numbers are there. There are the bank accounts which are opened under the Jandhan Yojana, that is a Jandhan scheme. So basically, as the mobile people's identity and a bank account got connected, what has happened? Many possibilities have opened up. You know this particular thing, that government gives a lot of subsidies. Now in the past, these subsidies were prone to lot of leakages. These subsidies were prone to lot of leakages, lot of diversions of the subsidies were there. Many times the delays were there when the physically cash was being given. But today the beneficiaries are receiving the entire money in their bank account on the basis of their Aadhaar identity and on the basis of their Jandhan bank accounts that have been opened up. Then there is the digital DigiLocker. Now the DigiLocker is for storing the digital documents. It is a digital storage, okay, and many of the government ministries are participating in DigiLocker and they are issuing their documents in the DigiLocker, which can be accessed from any place. Then Bharat Bill Pay System. Now it is a one-stop solution for multiple kind of payments. UPI, Aadhaar enabled payment system, IMPS, okay, Covin for the vaccination. All these platforms are the example of the digital public infrastructure, and all these are the open access platforms. Now, when we talk about, guys, India has solved the multiple challenges. India has solved, number one, the challenge of digital inclusion. What India has done? India has taken the platform approach and had mainstreamed the digitization across all the schemes of government. Now, guys, you take this particular example. What India did? India, first of all, opened the accounts of the people under the Jandhan Yojana. After that, there was the Aadhaar identity ecosystem that was created. Fine. Then what happened? The direct benefit transfer came in between. And through this particular thing, such a big platform has been made that all the government schemes, all the subsidies are directly through the technology are reaching to their beneficiaries without the leakages, without the diversions, without the corruption. Now, according to a study by the Bank for International Settlement, BIS, it has been said that in the digital public infrastructure, what India has done in 10 years, it would have taken 50 years to achieve. Fine. So 50 years of work we have done in just 10 years. Moreover, it has also been provided that all these platforms, they have been built on the basis of the digital public values. For example, openness, equity, inclusivity, fairness, transparency, trust. All these particular values have been kept, they have been upheld. Okay, privacy particularly has also been upheld. Now, over the period, over the coming next 10-15 years, we will find that there will be the countries that will be divided in two groups. Number one, there will be the countries who have leapfrogged onto the digital public infrastructure. They have created these platforms, and the other countries. Now, the countries who have created these digital public infrastructure platforms, they will be world leaders in delivering the social justice programs via technology. Okay, here the UPI architecture infrastructure is very important. Interoperability. Now, guys, when we talk about the UPI, we see this particular thing that the UPI was developed by the NPCI, National Payment Corporation of India. NPCI developed the UPI. Now, on the basis of UPI, there are the 50 plus third-party apps. For example, PhonePe is there. Even now the Jio, Airtel, they are offering their own UPI based apps. So 50 plus apps have been developed onto the UPI, which was developed by the NPCI. Okay. Now, as a result of Jandhan Aadhaar Mobile, Jan Trinity, today every household has the access to formal banking system. They have the credit option. They can avail the credit because in the Jandhan, their bank accounts have been opened. Insurance, pension scheme availability, they are having. Now, at the same time, it has also been provided that because of the government's active intervention, particularly the financial inclusion in India has increased a lot. On the financial inclusion, it is being, some data have been given, and these data are very important. Please use in the exam. Now, as per these particular data, it is being provided that before the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, when we talk about the bank accounts, only 15% of the bank accounts were operated by the women. But in the last 8 years, 460 million accounts have been opened, which is very much huge. And the number of accounts being operated by the women, it has increased from 15% to 56%. Okay, 67% of the account holders are from the rural India, semi-urban India. So in terms of the financial inclusion, it has seen such a rapid increase. Okay, after that, average deposit per account has also gone up by 71%. And why this particular thing has been possible? Because of the digital public infrastructure. Guys, understand this particular thing. As directly the payments are being made into the Jandhan accounts, subsidy payment are coming there, pension payments are coming there, other government welfare schemes payments as they are coming there. So what has happened? The bank deposits have also increased. Now, the platform approach has led to top class payment products being developed by the UPI, by many apps which have been there. Okay. Now, the next thing where India is taking the active intervention is in the e-commerce. E-commerce. Now, guys, when we talk about the e-commerce, we see that basically in India, a kind of a duopoly is existing. Now, what is a duopoly? Duopoly is a situation when there are the two major players in any one sector which are controlling the activity in that particular sector. Now, when we talk about the e-commerce place, the big two players are the Flipkart and Amazon. Are the Flipkart and Amazon. Now, though there are the other e-commerce players also, but their size is too small in comparison to the Flipkart and Amazon, that virtually these are the two meaningful players that we have in the e-commerce platform. Now, there is certain problems in this particular e-commerce system or e-commerce structure of India. What is the problem? Now, guys, understand this particular thing. Suppose this is a Amazon and Flipkart. Let's say I also open my e-commerce website, that is the Sahil's e-commerce place. Sahil's e-commerce place, that is a small e-commerce website I have also opened up. Now I want that the sellers should list their products on my website. Clear? But point is that the sellers, moreover, guys, I can understand Flipkart and Amazon, they also charge the hefty commission when the sellers are listing their products there. Sellers are also many a times frustrated by these policies, but they don't have any option to go. Suppose I start my e-commerce website and I say that, okay, you can come, you can list your products on my website. They, Amazon, Flipkart are charging, let's say 10% of your sales as commission. I will just charge 5% of your sales as commission. You come to my website. Okay. Let's say some of the e-sellers have come here. But when you have to buy shoes, when you have to buy a mobile phone, you will not be coming on my website. You don't even know that my website exists. What you do? You'll directly be going to the Flipkart and you will be going to the Amazon. So there will be no traffic on our website. And over a period of time, the sellers will shift again to Flipkart and Amazon. And I will also not be able to scale in front of these two players, that is the Flipkart and Amazon. They have developed such a big market cap that nobody can sustain in front of them. This is the big issue that is going on. So in response to that, ONDC has been developed by the government of India, and even a pilot project has been taken up few days back. So this ONDC, it stands for Open Network for Digital Commerce. Open Network for Digital Commerce. Now, what will be happening? This is one particular platform where the products featured onto the different websites will be published at the same time. For example, guys, on this particular, now see, if you are searching for the shoes, if you go on to Amazon, only you will see the sellers who are there on Amazon. If you go on Flipkart, you will see the sellers who are there onto the Flipkart. But on the ONDC platform, the sellers across all the platforms will be there. Okay, even the sellers who are onto the Sahil's e-commerce marketplace, they will also be visible. So it will give better visibility to the sellers. It will give better visibility to the small startups. And by that particular thing, the principle of access, principle of equity for the small and medium sized merchants, fine, will be there. Choice will be given. Okay, you will be going to Flipkart, then you'll be going to Myntra, then let's say you are going to some other website. Now at one platform, all these particular things, these products will be listed. It will give the customers also better experience. Competitiveness will be increasing. So this is the ONDC. Now ONDC is significant that it will give coverage to the digital retailers. Now guys, when we talk about the retailers, okay, fine, had the digital retailers, they are around 15,000. okay, out of 120 million retailers that we have in India, out of 120 million retailers, only 15,000 are available on e-commerce, okay, because the compliances on the e-commerce are still very much high. Now, this particular size will be enhanced. So therefore, ONDC is going to revolutionize the e-commerce frontier. This is the next big plan of India. Now, when we talk about, guys, the stats, the data with respect to the world, right now, out of the total global population, almost 4 billion people, they don't have the digital identity. 1.5 billion people, they are unbanked. 133 countries, they do not have the payment systems. Now, as India is taking over the presidency of the G20, it is an opportunity for India that India can create a complete package of these digital platforms. Aadhaar, UPI, Aadhaar, UPI. After that, you can take the other examples also. I'll just show you the slide so that you can just see all these particular things at the same time. So Aadhaar, fine, DigiLocker, Bharat Bill Pay, Aadhaar enabled payment system, UPI, IMPS, CoWIN. All these particular things can be packaged as a one package, and all these particular platforms can be provided to the governments of the different countries. So this could be a cloud in a box. By this particular thing, India can enhance its soft power. India can enhance its soft power and can leave a big impression while India is holding the leadership under G20. So this is something that can be done by India. Fine. So that is all, guys, about this particular article, and I hope that you have understood. It was really a fantastic article, a very good article. Now see, the idea is to cover these ideas. Okay, so when we talk about the UPSC exam, I already told you that the facts and the opinions are the two things. So for the opinion, basically, we are seeing all these articles. Now taking up the next article. So this article is funding the transition, and this particular article has been taken from the Indian Express newspaper. Now, this particular article, guys, meanwhile will be important for GS paper number 3. GS paper number 3, environment and climate change. Okay, now, so basically the article is talking about this thing that right now, guys, we find that into the world, extreme weather events are becoming more and more prevalent with every passing year. Okay, even I'm right now sitting in Delhi. It's 17th December, and it doesn't even feels that we are in the winters. So winters that used to be there 15 years back, such kind of winters we don't witness usually. This year we have not witnessed it till now. Now, guys, see this thing that climate change patterns, unpredictable rainfalls, okay, disturbed pattern in terms of the winter, summers, they have become a routine. Even the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's sixth assessment report that was released recently, it has very clearly provided that the extreme and unpredictable weather events are going to increase in the coming years. But at the same time, there is a rift, there is a division between the developing country and the developed countries. Why? Particularly onto the financial responsibilities for the climate change that the different blocks are having. Now, guys, understand this thing. It has been provided that 92% of the excess historical emissions, they are attributed to the developed countries. So the emissions of the developed countries are the luxury emissions, and because of that they have polluted. But who is facing the disaster, who is facing the cost? These are the poor countries. Today, as a part of the climate justice, it is provided that the rich countries should provide the finance to the poor countries. This is the biggest dispute in the COP26 that was held last year in the Glasgow. COP27 that has been held in Egypt this year. This was the biggest dispute that was there. So the group of 52 vulnerable countries, 58 vulnerable countries, they have just emitted 5% of carbon, but today they are the one who are the most impacted. Recently the flood came in the Pakistan, and the Pakistan's flood is costing around $30 billion. So Pakistan flood is $30 billion, but Pakistan's emission has not been there. Why this particular flood came? Because of the climate change pattern. In this particular capacity, the island nations, particularly into the Pacific, fine, they are prone to the submergence because of the sea level rise that will happen. But have they emitted the carbon? No. It is climate injustice that is happening, and on the basis of this climate injustice, there is the rift division between the developed and the developing country that is there. Now, as we talk about the climate change, in this particular dimension, the United Nations Environment Program UNEP estimates that it will need around 160 to 340 billion dollar by 2030 for the climate adaptation. But right now the money that is coming from the developed country is far less than what is needed. Now, that poor countries, the developing countries, they are facing the burden on two fronts. Number one front, they have to shift away from the fossil fuels. Okay. For example, when we talk about India, India is being forced by the developed countries that India should adopt the phase out. Should adopt the phase out. Now, what is this phase out? Phase out is in the context of the coal. They say India should abandon the use of coal entirely. Though India has already promised that by 2070 will become carbon neutral, but they say that even before that we need to phase out the coal. So the developing countries, first of all, on them the burden is that they need to shift away from the fossil fuels. And then second is that uh, basically these climate catastrophes, fine, increasing number of cyclones, okay, the rainfall pattern which are getting disturbed, it is also chipping away the fiscal resilience of the developing countries. Economic pressures, economic slowdowns, inflations, all these things are coming. So there is a double jeopardy that is happening onto the developing countries. Now, there are certain lessons from the COP27 that can be taken up. Number one, guys, understand this particular thing, that the draft decision that has been taken in Egypt in the COP27, United Nations had highlighted this particular thing, that we need to, just a minute, let me change the pen. It has been provided that we need to scale up the funding that is required to transform the financial systems. The financial systems, private finance, as well as the sovereign finance systems needed to be revolutionized so that more and more money flows to the developing and vulnerable countries. So there is a revolution that is needed, number one. Number two, it has been provided that institutional architecture of a multilateral fund has been demonstratively slow to deliver. Fine. Whatever the quantum of money was needed, they have not been able to deliver that particular money. Then third thing that is coming in this particular direction is that, guys, that understand, basically it is very much evident that there are the estimated gaps into the finance. Okay. In 2009, in the Copenhagen, it was promised by the developed countries that by 2020 $100 billion, by 2020 $100 billion as climate finance will flow to the developing country by 2020, but up till now this climate finance has not come. Okay, this is one thing. Now in this COP27, in the COP27 that has been held into the Egypt, it has been agreed that a loss and damage fund will be created. Now, this loss and damage fund will be a specific fund from which the money will go to those countries which are definitely going to face the loss and damage because of the sea level rise that is happening. Okay, their tourism will be lost, other ecological losses will be there. So, for make up for that particular thing, this loss and damage fund, new fund will be created, and this particular fund is being called as the victory for the small island developing state, SIDS, small island developing states. But there is also many problems that are there. Okay, small island developing state. But here also there is a problem. Number one, up till now, what will be the design of this fund? How much money will come? Who will contribute? On what basis the money will be given to other countries? All these things have not been decided. Okay, this is something. Now there are other issues also with the multilateral funds that we are having. Now in the past we have seen this particular thing, that the Green Climate Fund was there, which was designed to support the adaptation, mitigation. Okay, how the adaptation can be carried, but basically there is a lot of discontentment. The money promised, it has never come. Moreover, there is a reluctance amongst the big economies, big nations such as the US, etc., to contribute to the developing country. Then at the same time, USA made several announcements at COP27, but they did not support it wholeheartedly, the loss and damage fund. Because according to them, if they will support this particular idea, then inordinate burden will come on USA. But they are not understanding this particular thing, that we don't have other planet. We don't have a planet B. We don't have planet B. This is something which has become more of an ethical responsibility that should be taken up. Right? Now, can private capital be the savior? Okay, so the developing country, the developed countries, many number of times they have said that the private capital will flow and in the mean course of time that will provide the assistance that is needed by these particular countries. But understand this particular thing, that private capital will come. It has many of the issues. Number one, we all know about the whims of the private capital. Now, when we talk about the developing countries, they have competed in the past to attract the private capital. Okay, they have given many of the tax breaks to them. They have given many favorable tax treatments to them. But we see this particular thing that still there are more financial expectations of this private sector, and because of that particular thing there are going to be the problem. Okay, so this is something that is needed. Moreover guys, in this particular capacity, see, though private capital is something which is being suggested, but it can only be secondary thing. Primarily the sovereign capital, the public capital, the money or the grants by the developed countries should come. Okay, then there are also the growing pressure onto the developing countries to abandon the access to the fossil fuels. Okay, as I told you that there is the phase out of the coal, there is the phase out of the coal that is being forced on the countries such as India. But this is something which will have adverse consequence onto the growth. Now India, the developing countries, their priority is poverty alleviation, their priority is to bring the growth, and in that particular capacity forcing them to abandon the fossil fuels will bring a lot of economic challenges for them. Fine. Now, what can be the way forward in this particular direction? Number one, guys, the way forward in this particular direction could be this, that we need to overhaul, we need to bring substantial changes into the tax architecture. Now guys, it is being provided that there are many of the activities which are not being suitably taxed. We can tax these activities. For example, the financial transaction tax in the European Union. So in the European Union, the financial transactions that are happening, on that a particular tax can be imposed, and that particular tax money can go for the climate adaptation. There is also the national carbon tax that can also be discussed. Okay, so national carbon tax on the activities which are emitting the carbon, coal sector. So national carbon tax can also be discussed, and that particular money can also go for the adaptation and mitigation. Then understand, basically at the COP27, this particular thing has been underscored that we need to accelerate the finance. Okay, we need to accelerate the public as well as private finance, and that for that particular thing all the financial actors in the private sphere, in the public sphere, needs to come together. Now in this particular direction guys, in the G20, as right now India is leading the G20, India can play a very important role. Moreover, India already had done a very good thing. Recently India has released long term low emission development strategy, low carbon emission development strategy, long term low carbon emission development strategy. Now what is this particular strategy? I will tell you briefly. Basically in 2015 when the Paris agreement was agreed, at that point of a time it was provided that the countries will submit two types of strategy to reduce the carbon emission. Number one will be the short and medium term strategy, and the second is the long term strategy. Now recently India submitted its long term strategy, and India is among the 57 countries which have done up till now. Now this particular strategy, it's a fitting response to the developed world that India is really serious in this particular strategy. Basically in this particular strategy, what are the features we are going to discuss, but before that, the principle of common but differentiated responsibility, okay, should not be traded for the promise of the finance. Now understand this particular point, it is a very important point. Common but differentiated responsibility, this is the principle in the climate change negotiations that has been adopted. It simply means that climate change is a common problem. Number one, to reduce the carbon emission, to resolve the problem of climate change, it is a common responsibility, but at the same time it's differentiated, means the responsibility of the different countries are not same. In this particular context, developed countries have more responsibilities, developing countries has less responsibilities. Now what is happening, the developed countries are saying to the developing countries that in a way they are saying that let's abandon this CBDR principle, you also do what we are doing. They are in a way asking that both developed and developing countries should have the same responsibilities. This principle cannot be traded. Okay, Now, understand this particular thing, guys, that as we talk about India today, India is, yes, among the world's largest carbon emitter. But two things we need to keep in mind. India is a developing country, one. Secondly, India is a per capita carbon emission. They are even lower than the world average and far more lower than what the US is emitting even today. Now, India's long-term carbon development strategy, long-term low emission carbon development strategy that has been released, fine. It is based on certain target principles. Number one, India is committed to combat the climate change. India is going to make the development choices in such a way that we grow and at the same time we become the net zero by 2070. Now, what are the important features? Number one, India will focus on rational utilization of natural resources, coal, other fossil fuels, and other resources. We will be rationally be using it. Energy security is something which needs to be prioritized. Second thing is that India also aspires to maximize the use of electric vehicles, and in this particular capacity, number one, we are running the ethanol blending program, and E20 by 25, E20 by 25 program is also being is going on, where by 2025 in all the petrol 20% ethanol blending will be done. This is one. And second, electric vehicles are also being supported. For that particular thing, government is running the multiple schemes also. For example, the FAME scheme phase 2 has recently been started. Then India will also focus on sustainable and climate resilience, urban development, smart city initiatives, integrated planning of the cities, adaptations, mainstreaming, efficiency of the resources, okay, green building codes, all these particular things will be done. At the same time, innovative solid waste liquid management will be done. Then the next is India is also focusing on the PAT, that is perform, achieve, and trade scheme. Now, under the perform, achieve, and trade scheme, the focus is on enhancing the efficiency of the energy consumption. National hydrogen mission is being started up. High level of electrification is being done in wherever process. Material efficiency, recycling, circular economy, these particular things are being focused up. Guys, please note down these particular points directly because they are important for the examination. At the same time, basically it is also being focused that we will be bringing the cost effective new technologies, new infrastructure, okay. And at the same time, it is also being provided that for these particular things the climate finance is also needed, trillions of dollars. And according to certain ideas, it is being provided that from 8 to around 8 to 11 trillion dollars will be needed by 2050, okay. Now, throughout the climate negotiations that has been there, climate justice, sustainable lifestyle principles, common but differentiated responsibilities, these have been the principles that India had pitched again and again. So this is, guys, all about this particular article. And with this we come to end to this article, and now let's take the next article, that is the Tawang clash is the wake up call, don't let China off the hook. Now, this article, guys, has been taken from the Hindustan Times, and this particular article will be seen with respect to the GS paper number 2, international relation, India China relations. India China relations. Now, so basically, if you are following the newspapers, you might be knowing already that there are the new round of confrontations that have happened between the India and China, particularly in the Tawang sector. Particularly in the Tawang sector. Now, basically, guys, as we talk about this Tawang sector dispute, so Tawang is in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, we are going to know about this particular issue. So, basically, guys, as this confrontation has happened, it is being called as an example of the coercive diplomacy of China. What is coercive diplomacy? Coercive diplomacy is a flavor of the diplomatic choices where the force is used by a country so that the other country adheres to it adheres to the demands of the former country, which is using that coercive diplomacy. Now, understand this thing. China is deliberately using the border disputes. It is using the border troops for carrying the low intensity clashes. Okay, low intensity clashes. China deliberately is not pushing India to the wars, but it is keeping the India engaged into these particular wars. What are the objective? Why China wants to keep India engaged? Number one, to convey the displeasure with India's external policies. Now, what are the India's external policies? India's converging relations with the USA. Now, USA is all outrightly carrying the containment of China. And that containment of China is being taken up under the multiple frameworks. For example, we have the quadrilateral security dialogue. That is the most important one. There is the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Though India is not a part, but AUKUS, Australia, UK, US alliance is going on. Now, all these Quad, AUKUS, IPEF, all they are seeing that they are oriented against China. And India is a meaningful partner of USA. And China doesn't find this particular thing good. It is irritated by this thing. And again, because of this particular thing, China is doing its adventurism. Second, to nibble off additional territory wherever possible. Wherever they can grab that territory, they want to do that particular thing. And to demonstrate Chinese asymmetrical power and capabilities that are against India, to flex their muscles, to show their plight, to show their might, they are doing this particular thing. Now, guys, understand this particular thing. China expects that by these particular kind of theatrics that the China is doing, India will absorb the China's message. Now, understand that up till now, India has behaved reactively. India has behaved reactively. Now, point is that whether this India's reactive policy is right or India should change its policy vis-a-vis the China is concerned. What should be the best policy that India should take? So on that particular thing, guys, there is no one answer. We need to analyze this particular situation a little bit more. So as we talk about this present dispute, so this present dispute has happened into the Yangtze. Now the Yangtze is in the Tawang. Let me change the pen. So Yangtze is in the Tawang sector. Okay, now this particular Yangtze is very sensitive region and there are multiple reasons for this particular thing. What are the reasons? Number one, guys, basically, just a minute. Yes, number one reason is this, that the China claims the entire Arunachal Pradesh as the part of their southern Tibet. And they have said this particular thing, that that particularly the Tawang is the core intrinsic part of the Tibet and it should be returned to Tibet at every cost. And therefore, any confrontation here is not just incidental, but it is a part of a well elaborated and well thought out plan that China is having. Secondly, the China says that the Tawang has been captured by India as late as 1951, and even they have put the supportive claims for this particular thing. They say that even the Dalai Lama government that is into the Lhasa in the Tibet, they have asserted the claim on the Tawang. Moreover, they say that the fifth Dalai Lama was born into the Tawang, and therefore Tawang is a part of a Tibet, and therefore it should be returned back to the China because it has a cultural value, it has a religious significance for the China. Fine. So therefore, Chinese military activity is having a larger significance. It is having a bigger significance. Now, what are the proximate triggers of this latest incident? Why now? Now this had happened, guys? See this particular thing. What we have discussed here, it is a reason which has not emerged just a few days back. It is there since 1951. But what are the immediate triggers? So immediate triggers we have, number one immediate trigger is that China is showing the anger to the India because recently, basically, India and USA had carried a military exercise in Uttarakhand, which is in the close vicinity of the LAC. So therefore, China is irritated, and to just give a message to India, China has done this particular thing. Okay. The next thing that has happened, basically China has already protested that the exercises that are happening in around the LAC between India and USA, they will disturb the peace and tranquility agreements. And because India proceeded, now just as a reply, China is doing this particular thing. Then after that, basically, China's actions into the Arunachal Pradesh are also because of this particular fact that the China wants to say that whenever China wants, China can arm twist India. Whenever China wants, China can arm twist India. Whenever China wants, China can threaten the India. So for that particular thing, these Arunachal Pradesh disputes are being manufactured. Then the Chinese game is to nudge and not to compel India to choose. Okay, it just want to nudge India with respect to the Chinese concerns that have happened. Moreover, right now, guys, India is also having many of the high stakes. For example, we have taken the presidency under the G20. Then we are also going to become the president under the SCO summit. Fine. So as India is being hailed as a world leader, so China wants to pick that particular thing on a purpose. Then next thing that has come here is that, guys, what can be the way forward? So way forward something could be something like this, that see, this is the period of opportunity for India to enhance the international profile, to enhance the India's influence. Okay, why? Because India is the president of G20. We are going to assume the chair under the SCA. At the same time, guys, recently India has, now presently even, India is the UNSC non-permanent member, and particularly for the month of December, India has become also the president of the UNSC. Okay, so at such a high profile India is holding right now. Right now, it is also the period of vulnerability, because deliberately the China will be picking up on India. So on diplomatic side and on military side, we need to take up certain reforms. What can be the way forward? Number one way forward is that it is best that we should avoid the expressions of triumphalism. Fine, that G20 presidency India's coming out party. So that triumph, that pomp and show, okay, it needs to be just symbolic, and some on real diplomatic channels we need to engage. Now, understand this particular thing. Into the past, China has multiple times flexed the muscles. 2020, there was Galwan dispute that happened. Then now there is the Yangtze confrontation into the Tawang that has happened, and these particular kind of a thing can again be repeated as India is going to be the G20 president. So India needs to have a careful reflection in the diplomacy, that what are the strings that the diplomacy can pull so that these particular things can be minimized. Then at the same time, militarily also, we need to design a bolder strategy. Now, guys, understand this thing. Particularly in around the Arunachal sector, India is having the favorable position, because India is having the locations which are at height. Okay, so the heights advantage India has is having. So because of that particular thing, favorable mountain terrain as we are having, we have the same favorable points, and on this particular thing, we need to further leverage. Moreover, basically, guys, when we talk about the Doklam Plateau, on the Doklam Plateau, there was also basically on the India-Bhutan, uh, India-Bhutan, India-Bhutan, China, Tibet tri-junction that is there. Okay, sorry, China tri-junction that is there. We have earlier seen the confrontations, but we have solved that particular things through the military channels, through the core commander talks, etc. that has happened. Even onto the Pangong So, basically the active strategy of the defense forces, where they have actively engaged, it has shown considerable fruits. So that particular thing is to be repeated in this particular sector as well. Okay, so this is something the Indian armed forces would be best placed to judge the efficacy of such a strategy, that how they need to put that particular thing, they can judge that particular thing. Moreover, guys, India also should drop the constant references such as the difference in perception. Okay, basically, guys, we are saying that when there is a boundary dispute, India has some different perception, China is having some different perception. So in a way, China is having their perception, and we are giving legitimacy that China is correct also. So we should not use this particular thing. We say that there is no difference of perception. There is only one fact with respect to the boundary. China is not ready to accept that. When we say that there is a difference perception, it means when there are two perception, even Chinese perception can be correct. Okay, so we should not use this particular kind of. We should not use this particular kind of. References when we talk about, guys, the China never uses such kind of an expressions. So in this particular direction, we should be take understanding this particular thing. Okay, now moving on, guys, moving to the next article, how we treat our first citizens. Okay, before that, guys, let's take that out. Okay, sir, please, first of all, good evening, and very good evening to everyone. Okay, so sir, please continue this series. Yes, it will be continued. Please include the mint. Okay, yes, all the papers will be covered wherever there is a relevant articles that are coming. Okay, so the logic of this initiative is only to pick the best of the best editorials that we have. Okay, MD asks a question, sir, what is a triumphalism? Triumphalism is to show a great sense of achievement, to show a great sense of victory. Okay, just you have cleared the prelims exam, and then you have just you have distributed the sweets to all your relatives, and you said that now I have become an IAS officer. This is triumphalism, to show the great victory. Now that triumphalism should not be shown until and unless you have some very high stakes in your hand. Okay, now moving on. how we treat our first citizens. So this particular article is the article we have taken from the Times of India newspaper. And this particular article will see with respect to the GS1 and GS paper number 2, tribal issues. Tribal issues. Now, so the article is how we treat our first citizens. Now, guys, understand this particular thing, that when we talk about the tribal people, tribal people's rights, often it has been said that the treatment that is being shown to the tribal people, it is not very much good. Sometimes there are the tones of pride, sometimes there are the tones of prejudices, sometimes there are the tones of discrimination that has been there, which have not even been dropped up till now. Now, guys, here there is a reference of the Constituent Assembly that has also been given, and many number of times if we can give the Constituent Assembly references, it is very good for our examination. So in the Constituent Assembly, what are the viewpoints on the tribal people's rights? Number one, we have the Jaipal Singh Munda, who was the active proponent of the tribal people's rights. Okay, and the Jaipal Singh Munda, the Jaipal Singh Munda, an exemplary leader par excellence. He had pitched for the special recognition for the tribal people in the Constituent Assembly. But at the same time, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was opposed for any reservation for the tribal people in legislature or at any other place. Why? Because they said that tribal people up till now have not developed any political sense, and they cannot use the political opportunities even if they are given to them. Then, guys, at the same time, Jawaharlal Nehru was did not agree with the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He disagreed with the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, but actually he in a way patronized them through the safeguards. Okay, it was provided that the care should be given to the tribal people. Tribal areas should be given a lot of care. Okay, the tribal people are our unfortunate brothers who have faced a lot of deprivations, because even when there was a no fault, even the Jawaharlal Nehru gave the tribal Panchsheel. In the tribal Panchsheel, Jawaharlal Nehru listed many of the principles which should be kept in, five principles actually, which are to be kept in mind while the tribal people's policies for them are being made up. For example, there should not be excessive development, there should not be excessive interference by the outsiders. They should develop at their own genius. The tribal people's development should not be seen onto the basis of money that has been spent, rather onto the basis of the development that has come. So in this particular line, five principles have also been given. So the Nehru, basically in a way it has been said that Nehru's policies were more of a patronizing. Okay, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar did not believe that any political responsibility should be, political right should be given, and Jaipal Singh Munda believed that special recognition should be given to them. Now, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's idea was this, that up till now, because they were not politically active, they might not be able to make the use of political opportunity. This was the reason. Though Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was very sensitive, but his approach was different. Now, it has been said that despite of all the laws which have been enacted for the tribal people, but still the tribal people are believed as the uncivilized race. Clear? Such kind of references are there into our legal system. We'll see this particular thing. It has even been said that the tribal leaders of the Santhal uprising, such as the Sidhu and Kanu Murmu, who have been the heroes, they rarely feature in the history books. So they have not been given their due rights, they have not been given their due recognition. Now, how discrimination is continuing? It happens through three ways. Number one, there are still many pre-independence laws that are there, which shows deep-seated prejudices. Okay, so there's a word here. The word here is prejudices. It shows a deep-seated prejudices. How? Number one, we have example of the laws. For example, there is a Santhal Prangana Act of 1855. Now, this particular act was created after the Santhal uprising that happened. This act was created by the East India Company. Now, in this particular act, certain areas in the Bengal presidency were just left out. Certain areas of the Bengal presidency were just kept aside, that general regulations and the acts of the government, general laws, will not be applicable on those particular areas. Why? Because it is said that the tribals are too uncivilized. These people don't understand the laws, and they don't even deserve that they should be governed under the laws. Okay, this is the this is a point where the scope for arbitrariness opened up against the tribal people. So the areas were not even included under the general regulations. Now, where this particular thing is provided, clearly it is provided into the preamble of the Santhal Prangana's Act. Now, this particular thing prevails even today. Even this attitude prevails in the regions where the tribal people are living. Now it has been provided that at the same time there is a cocktail, there is a collection of certain prejudices which are there in the laws as well. Now I want to give you a special reference here, that is the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871. Now what is this Criminal Tribes Act? As per this particular act, it was believed that certain tribes are born criminals, and when even the child was born in those particular tribes, an FIR was to be lodged into the local police station. So certain tribes were believed as that they were criminal by the birth. So the Criminal Tribes Act was there, which was instituted in the British era. Now, this Criminal Tribe Act actually got replaced with the Habitual Offenders Model Bill. Habitual Offenders Model Bill. And on the basis of the Habitual Offenders Model Bill, state level Habitual Offenders Act has been created. And into the Habitual Offenders Act, there are the references of the habitual offenders who do the offenses at a regular occurrence. They are provided. Now, it has been provided, though this particular act has been dropped, Criminal Tribe Act has been dropped, and the names of the tribals who were written into this particular act, they are denotified. They are denotified. But still, guys, the colonial hangover is there. Even in the Habitual Offenders Act at the state level that are there, they are specifically targeting the tribals at many a times. Is it clear or not? So the denotified tribes who were earlier the part of the Criminal Tribes Act, they are disproportionately targeted. It has been provided that they are targeted, the data onto the tribes are extracted from them. There is no regard for their privacy. They are called to submit their photographs, fingerprints, footprints, palm impressions, their iris scans, just so that a track can be kept on that. So basically there is no regard for the privacy. Okay. Then basically, guys, at the same time, even under the guise of protecting their cultural autonomy, there is the prejudices that are being adopted against the tribal people. Now understand this particular thing. We have the fifth and the sixth schedule in the Indian Constitution. Under the fifth and the sixth schedule, there are the special tribal areas and the special provisions for the scheduled and tribal areas that are there, and they are given a lot of autonomy. For example, the governors are empowered that they can prevent or they can modify any central or the state laws application onto the scheduled areas, the areas that are mentioned into the Schedule 5 and Schedule 6. It is being said that these Schedule 5 and 6 are giving autonomy to them. It is there so that they can protect their primitive culture and all such kind of things. But guys, you need to know little bit history about this particular thing. It has been provided that these particular areas were previously called as typically and really backward tracts, and they were mentioned as the typically and really backward tracts under the Government of India Act 1990, and they were also declared as the partially and wholly excluded area under the Government Act 1935. And these areas now in the Constitution became under they came under the Schedule 5 and Schedule 6. This is something that has happened. Now, the language of the fifth and sixth schedule is something like this, that it is saying that we need to protect the tribal people. Okay, we need to help these people. Now, this particular language is patronizing. Guys, what is patronizing? Patronizing is when you assert a kind of a dominance, when you assert a kind of a supremacy on a particular person or a group of people. That is a patronizing behavior. So basically, this particular language of the fifth and the sixth schedule is patronizing. It is being provided. Now, guys, it has been provided that when we talk about the people here, okay, now these people, now it has been provided that though it is a duty for government to address the social and educational backwardness of these people, but they are needed to be treated with more respect and equality, rather than giving other people an authority on tribal people. They needed to be treated with more respect and equality. Okay, rather than assimilation. What is assimilation? Assimilation is one where when one big group tries to make a small group as a part of their own. So rather than assimilation, rather than a kind of a patronizing, their respect and equality is known to be more treated. Even the Sardar Patel said into the Constituent Assembly that all the laws that have given the protection to the tribal people are there, but have they really protected them? So basically the point is that rather than just doing a lip service, rather than just patronizing, the genuine development is to be carried. It is being provided that to disrupt the colonial continuities, we need to decolonize our laws. Okay, such kind of an undertones that are there into the laws, they are needed to be removed, and we need to decolonize our minds. That is something which has been provided in this particular article. So guys, that is all for the today's newspaper and editorial analysis discussion. Guys, with this we come to an end to the today's editorial analysis discussion. Guys, I hope that you have understood this particular session. And just as a kind of an update, this particular session will be carried from Monday to Saturday. Monday to Saturday. Why? Because in most of the newspapers on Sunday, we don't have the editorial section, lifestyle, leisure, etc. These pages come. So from Monday to Saturday, this particular initiative will be streamed live at around 7 p.m. in the evening. So guys, stay tuned, and I wish to see you again in the next session that we have on Monday. If you have liked the video, please do hit the like button, and please do leave your comments. That is all for today. Okay, let's take some doubts if they are there. So basically, if Priyanka says, sir, can we, in India-China relationship topic, we can conclude by quotation that we can change friends but not the neighbors. Yes, very good. You can do that thing. MD films, can we use this heavy words? Okay, triumphalism. Yes, it's not a heavy word. Triumphalism is not a heavy word. It is just a common word that can be there. Yes, they can be used. Okay, so that is all, guys, about this.